Legislature is back in session. We have our last amendment in Chapter 1. This amendment is by Senator Perez. Colleagues, this amendment is labeled as SFP L10 P1-7. Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to proffer this amendment as stated by the chair. And what this amendment does, it basically amends the bill to allow for a 4% business privilege tax for businesses grossing $2 million and between $500,000 and under $2 million, and any business making above $2 million will be taxed the 5%. And this is it basically hits all the categories except for the banking section, because they are taxed on net income, I believe. And let me check if there's any other exceptions. The other exception was the dealing in foreign currency, because the taxes are based on gross profit, which is another way of saying net. And so the purpose of this amendment was to provide a compromise, because we can give businesses today the full 4%. Those that are operating under $2 million, between $500,000 and $2 million. As we know, those that are operating under $500,000 already qualify for LEXB, which they get the 3% BPT. So the reason for this is that this would cost roughly about $8.7 million, versus if we were to account for the 4.5% for all businesses, that would be, according to the calculations provided by DRT, would be about $37.6 million. So a difference of roughly $29 million will be available to fund some of the things that have been shorted. For instance, initially there was the Simon Sanchez, but that's been covered with the one of the amendments proffered today. There's also, like I said earlier, $3.3 million for federal matching to yield 14 point some million for Medicaid, which I think is a good investment, or a good appropriation, because we're more than, getting more back than what we put in. The other thing that I mentioned today was the income tax refunds. And so I believe that we are putting ourselves at risk for only putting aside $25 million. In the committee of whole, it was mentioned that at least $12 million more should be added to the income tax refund section, considering changes in the overall budget and according to the congressional budget, which would increase deductions, and then also it would probably put us in a position where we have to provide more refunds. And so those are things that I think would be needed to, we need to put some of that money towards, as well as funding Guam EPA. They've lost $12 million. And so there has to be some way that I feel that we need to account for that. Also, Department of Public Health, there's other needs that was mentioned according to Stephanie Flores of the Clearinghouse. I think I estimated almost $10 million in lost funding. It ranges from early childhood development to SNAP, and then other things, I believe, like Medicaid, as well as immunization. So these are things that are essential and basic to the health of our community. So that is the purpose of this amendment. We can, I feel that we can afford, this is what we can afford. We can afford to provide a 4% rollback, a 1% rollback for businesses operating between 500 and 2 million, and also take care of some basic needs of our community, as well as safeguard any kind of income tax refund, increase in income tax refund. So this is the purpose of this amendment, is to provide some sort of compromise, and I hope my colleagues can consider this. Mrs. Usmasi.
Usmasi, Senator Perez. On the amendment, would anybody would like to speak on the Perez amendment? On the Perez amendment, anyone would like to speak on the Perez amendment? Senator Perez, would you like to close? Okay. Senator Guåhan, you are recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And can I just say that I object to this amendment, and just again, as I mentioned a couple times today during the session, and I've kind of sat here for at least 10 hours, and can I just say that I've heard so much, the right thing to do, we're putting at risk what we can afford, and Mr. Chair, you, the good senator from Tamuning, the good senator from Barrigada offered up, and myself offered up 4 options for our community to find some fairness. And all I've heard today is that it's not fair, and then come up with options that just did not go through the public hearing process. And I think what it's not fair to this community is to go into this particular budget process. And yes, I know historically that's happened before. But to come in here and say, well, there's another option, I want to compromise, but did they attend those public hearings? Did they offer up any other solutions? It would have been great to see some of these, in fairness, to compromise of 4 other bills proffered by the 38th Guam Legislature. But instead, in less than 8 hours, we get 4 presented to your committee, Mr. Chair. And it's a bit frustrating, but as a new member of this body, I think that all these arguments you've heard, the people of Guam have heard, it's pretty disingenuous to come in here as we're doing the budget. Now these become important. Now this is where I want to offer up. And I think this community has listened to this. This is pretty disingenuous. I would hope that they would come back, proffer up a legislation, bring it to the public hearing room, and give this community a chance. I'll use what I've heard from my colleagues before. It's the darkness of night. And let me offer up a solution that I believe would be great. But you know what? It's no fault of the governor. We need to do this now in the darkness of night. How about over the last 7 months? Again, 4 proffered. I was hoping to see 4 of these. It would have been important. If it's such a priority, Mr. Chair, to the people of Guam and to them, they would have brought it sooner, in all due respect to the people of Guam. And I just, again, I rise in objection one more time and would encourage a public hearing where the people can have a little bit of discourse with the respective authors of these amendments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Guåhan. Senator Barnett, you're recognized on the Perez amendment.
Mr. Chair, and buenas noches, Mariquita. Thank you for watching us this evening. Well, that's a rich pun intended. Let's talk about disingenuous. When the public hearings for the business privilege tax reduction bills were heard, nobody told the people of Guam that you were going to slip this into the budget bill. We didn't know that you were going to shortchange critical public services in favor of a huge corporate tax payoff, ramrodded into this budget bill under cover of night and secrecy. Nobody knew. So to talk about being disingenuous, Mr. Chair, I think this budget bill is disingenuous. The conversation I heard during the public hearings, the business privilege tax reduction, was that there would be more hearings. There would be more opportunities to provide input. And yet, here we are, trying to make up for these shortchangings of critical public services because you couldn't wait to finish out the legislative process. Because there are commitments being made with these huge corporations, I'm assuming, to prepare for next year's gubernatorial election. So when we talk about disingenuous, let's talk about how this whole debate on the business privilege tax reduction was framed. It was framed with the narrative that there are struggling businesses out there who are having a hard time making ends meet. And we've tried to help those businesses in this budget session. But each of the targeted, meaningful implementations of the business privilege tax reductions that we have proffered on this floor that would benefit the businesses that probably are struggling, and we're not talking about the businesses with the $50 million, the $100 million, the $200 million, the $500 million bottom line. So let's not talk about disingenuous, because we are trying to help the businesses that need the help. What's disingenuous is shortchanging the people of Guam's tax refunds so that your corporate buddies can get an $80 million payoff. And yet, when we tried to fund the shortfalls in the people of Guam's tax refunds, it was rejected. It was rejected. And so now here we are scrambling, trying to fill in all these holes that have been created by this business privilege tax reduction, which nobody knew was going to be slipped into this budget bill. I didn't hear that in the public hearing. What I heard was that we were going to be careful. We were going to be measured. We were going to solicit input. But it's clear that this big, beautiful compromise isn't a compromise at all. The terms of the deal, my dear people of Guam, have already been set. It's clear there's no room for compromise when this $80 million paycheck has already been signed. And any effort to make sense of this big money payoff is getting shut down. The people of Guam are watching, and they know what's disingenuous. It's disingenuous to put the needs, the desires, really, the wants of huge corporations against and above the needs of Medicaid, Medicare patients, the needs of hardworking families that are counting on funds for tax refunds being there. A new hospital, the existing hospital, the public schools, all getting the short end of the stick because the terms of the deal have already been set. The compromise is a lie. And so when we talk about being disingenuous, let's be honest about who is the priority in this budget bill, because it's not the people of Guam, Mr. Chair. Situus Masi.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. On the Paris Amendment, Chairman Duenas, you're recognized.
Situus Masi, Mr. Chair, Vice Speaker. Talk about rich. You know, I hear all this talk about the corporations funding who's running for governor in this hall. I know 3 candidates declared for governor in this hall, but I think somebody's trying to declare themselves for governor in this hall as the reverse Robin Hood governor, maybe with another buddy right next to him. So when they pick up their packet, we'll all know what they're really doing on this floor, is running for governor. But I'll tell you something right now, Mr. Chair. Oh my gosh. 800 million, 900 million, 1 billion, 1.2 billion, 1.335 billion. When is it going to stop? We're short, we're short, we're short. I don't even know how other governors manage this government. We should have fell apart and fallen to the ocean 2, 3, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. The fear-mongering that's going on here. They sat here and they talked about it. Even Mr. Byrne, yeah, make a modest, adjustment to these refunds. And did he ever say he won't pay refunds? I put him on the record. You better doggone not pay refunds because it's court ordered. And the set aside for refunds is an estimate. People don't buy into this crap because these guys will do everything in here to demonize the business community, to talk about fat cats.
Point of information,
And
Mr. Chair.
no. There's no point of information.
information,
You point
Mr.
of information when I'm done, Senator. I did not interrupt you.
The rules allow for me to
I
make...
did not interrupt you. I did not
Mr.
interrupt you,
Chair?
Senator. Please
Mr. Chair.
reserve
rules-
my time. Put
Sir.
back 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The rules allow
Hold
me to
on.
make a point of
Senator
information,
Barnett?
and when raising a point of information,
No,
I'm allowed to interrupt the speaker.
I understand, but
Thank you. I just
Point of
wanted to
information.
reiterate
Hold it.
Director Burns' comments on the record. He said when the money runs out to pay the tax refunds, he's going to have to come back here and ask for more money. That's what was said on the record. It's not fear-mongering, it's facts.
okay, just for clarification, my colleagues, a point of inquiry or a point of information is a request for information from the presiding officer with respect to procedure concerning some question before the body, or which may be immediately brought before the body. Occasions frequently arise when one member desires information from another. Such requests are not technically parliamentary inquiries, but are generally subject to the same rule. So in other words, a point of information or a point of inquiry is you're asking information from me, not you giving information. So I just wanted to make that clear. And that's on the standing rules, section 102, section 1.027C. Thank you. Senator Chairman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I will address that also while out of order. I can tell you right now, what's on the record is Mr. Byrne clarified. He would not stop paying tax refunds. In fact, what he talked about, and I can pull up the clip, was that normally what happens is the new fiscal year allows for any remaining in the prior fiscal year to be paid. Because normally where those tax refunds end up being required after the full year is those who either filed or had errors or whatever else, and they make up for them, and then they take care of them with the next fiscal year. He talked about how that rolls over, but I don't want to concentrate on that too much, Mr. Chair. It's obvious what's going on here. It's a desperate attempt by those on the other side of the aisle to convolute this, to sit here and amendment after amendment after amendment, make their point ad nauseum that we are crashing this government. Crashing this government at $1.35 billion. That's rich. And to say, and I'm telling you, these people are listening, these businesses are listening, these employees of these businesses are listening, how disingenuous these senators are on the other side. Like my good friend, the speaker said, how have you forgotten about 45,000 private sector employees and their employers who are struggling to keep their businesses open, who haven't gotten a pay raise, not a 22% pay raise, Mr. Chair, not even a 1% pay raise. Many of these people, Mr. Chair, work 2, 3 jobs just to take care of their family. Sometimes they lose that one job because that business closes. Stop demonizing the business community. Just stop. If you want to not vote for this budget and go out there and campaign for governor on Robin Hood, go do it. But doggone it, stop. or just keep going to show that all you want to do is put a narrative out every time. And yes, Mr. Chair, these folks never came. In fact, we'll go back to the real, and some of the senators sitting in this hall said, I will not. They stood up and stormed out the door. I will not even play with this. These fat cats don't deserve it. I will close with this, Mr. Chair. This is the best time to do these adjustments because it affects the budget. What these guys want to do is they want to take it outside of it because they don't want to have to vote on a budget that contemplates tax relief, that reins in government spending, and that considers the private sector and everybody on Guam, not just their special interest. That's the facts. They don't want to have to vote against this budget. They'd rather vote on a standalone bill when this is the best time to do it because we're talking about the finances of the government of Guam, because they want to escape out, run away, and be able to hide behind probably a veto-proof measure. Senator Gumatauta has done the work. Do your job. I object to this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Anyone else on the Paris Amendment?
Point of
Senator
information,
Caroline.
or point of order, Mr. Speaker, and I'm citing the same rule that you did. You just failed to read the rest of it, where it says, a member desiring information concerning a question before the body may rise and without wanting or waiting to be recognized say, I rise to a point of inquiry, or may say, I rise to a point of information. When a point of inquiry relates to a question which requires immediate attention, it may be made while a member has the floor and may even interrupt a speech.
Absolutely, Senator Chalahi, but that is asking the presiding officer information, not you giving information
It also
to
says
the
when they need information from a member and that they could interrupt. I'm just reading the rest of the rule that you just only read part of
Absolutely,
it.
but whenever we use the point of
On the
order
bill.
or point of inquiry, it's information from the presider to yourself.
I just
Not-
read the rule, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, maybe it's upside down, like your colleague said.
On the Paris Amendment, anyone wish to be recognized? Senator Tadic, will you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wow, I thought in the 35th or the 37th, I was the loudest one in here and make a hoopla about certain things, but I think it's just we're all tired in here and getting frustrated. And that's exactly what it is. It's just frustration. The amendment before us, you know, I commend her for trying to find a way to find some kind of funding to pay for things like roads or our children's needs, the tax refunds. There's so many. There's a list, a long, long list of bills that we're going to have to address sooner or later. I introduced a measure that had 7 votes to 8. And that, unfortunately, it didn't get through, and it was another compromise. You know, I respect, you know, her trying on this, you know, but for me, maybe $2 million is just a little bit, you know, too low on a 5%. I was thinking about putting an amendment in here, you know, to raise it, but I just think, and even adding my military part in here, military contracts in here, if I can make the amendment, but it's just at a point where everybody is just frustrated with the fact that we're going to have to come up with some funding to pay for our bills. And unfortunately, there's certain people in this body that we don't see it. I mean, we just had to deal with OFB trying to finally concur with using FY25, 24, and 23 by an illegal opinion on the tax refunds. And I'm glad I had the opportunity to talk to him afterwards and ask him, oh, well, since you got this legal opinion, which now are you going to use? He says he'll have to follow the legal opinion on it. So I appreciate that. But I don't think, I'm just saying to my colleagues, just let's everybody calm down a little bit and realize that we're all on the same team when it comes to making Guam a better place to live, a safer place to live. We are all on the same team. I hope so. And if we're not, and there are shenanigans going on in here, don't think that the people of Guam are blind. They are not blind, they see it. So that being said, Mr. Speaker, I think everybody, let's work for the people of Guam here and what's in their best interest. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Chair.
On the Perez Amendment, anyone else wish to speak on the Perez Amendment? Senator Chalai, you recognize.
Sidus Masi, I appreciate the previous speaker's call for calmness and demeanor in the legislature, particularly when we're just discussing an amendment, a proposed solution for the lack of funding for certain things. This is what we do in the legislature. We debate. I don't know why the anger and extreme yelling or any of that has to happen. So this amendment, I support. It is another option for a solution that decreases taxes, particularly for those under $2 million, from what the current bill does. It would give them a bigger break, and yet it would yield revenues for us because of what the budget failed to provide. This option is a reduction. If the reduction of BPT could be put into this budget bill, then this is perfectly legitimate to be put into this budget bill. It's the same thing. The rollback was not part of budget that was recommended to us. It was in the hearing. We are going to treat this after the budget. I think I heard that at least once. But the 0.5% was never discussed at those hearings either. And yet we have a bill in front of us with a 0.5% reduction. So I'm just saying, let's not be pots calling the kettles black. These options or solutions would not be necessary if we had a responsible budget before us that funded the critical needs that were pointed out to us over and over, like tax refunds, the people's money, prioritizing that, like health care, GMH. And these refunds and health care are for all those thousands of private employees that you talk about. They need that from us. They absolutely need and want, and so do all of the business owners and their employees want their tax refunds and health care from the government of Guam. And if we're trying to provide relief and give those making $2 million or less a bigger tax break than in the budget bill before us, I say great idea. Greater savings, again, to the smaller businesses, the ones that during the public hearing, they kept coming in and saying the small businesses, these are the small businesses. And this option would give them a bigger tax break. It would also allow us some money for the existing hospital, the new hospital, the Medicaid, so we can get the $14 million from the feds to provide refunds to the amount that we should be providing, to provide money to the Guam Cancer Trust Fund that was taken out in this budget. The Guam Cancer Trust, the Guam Department of Education, people are still talking about what are we going to do with the continuing issues. So I'm all for solutions, and I'm all for to stop the hypocrisy. And if it's good for you to put into the budget a 0.5% reduction in BPT, then it's absolutely germane and even better to give a bigger reduction to businesses $2 million and below. And again, this is at least an attempt to try to take care of the shortfalls of the budget, and so I very much support the author in this endeavor.
Thank you for your hypocrisy. There is no
Excuse
reduction.
me, Mr. Chair.
There is no, excuse
Mr. Chair,
me, excuse me,
you
excuse me.
are-
No, I have the floor.
If you want
and
to
I will
debate,
tell you,
you
have
need
done it.
to come
Other
to the
chairs have done
floor.
it. No, you're out of order.
No, Mr.
You are
Chair.
rich. There is no reduction
I am rich.
whatsoever.
Mr.
There is
Chair.
no reduction whatsoever of the Cancer Trust Fund. In fact, there's plenty of money in
The
there
Cancer
for
Trust
that.
Fund
and
is
for you, and for you who
$500,000
use the F word on this floor
of
to talk about speeches.
the
You use the F word on this
500,000
floor,
the
and I can
Mr.
plenty
Chair,
of tape where you have been
if you
extra
can't
passionate.
act
You are
as
out
the
of
chair,
order, and I'll
then
tell you what,
please
you have lied on the
replace
floor
yourself.
because there's plenty of money
Mr.
for
Chair,
Cancer Trust Fund.
Please, I think you need to replace
Any
yourself
other,
as chair if you can't handle it, Mr.
Any other
Chair.
senator on the amendment?
We are
Any
having
other
a
senator
debate
on the
here.
amendment?
You are not
Any other
entitled
senator
to
on the
just
amendment?
make commentary whenever
Any
you
other
want.
senator
You have to
on
come
the
back
amendment?
down here
We
just
are
as
in
we do,
recess.
Mr. Chair.
Legislature is back in second session on the amendment. Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's been a lot of interesting language. Demonize, fat cats, evil millionaires, which is something I don't think any of us have said. This is all projections. And if you ask me, I think people are telling on themselves a little bit. The austerity measures that are being put before us are also really telling. In the previous legislatures, when we had a surplus, what did we do with it? We gave it to the people. Power credits, frontline workers, firefighters, safety officers. But with this new majority, what do they choose to do with their surpluses? To give fat cuts to the top 1%. They want the people of Guam to do with less, while the rich get richer and those with more get more. And this is not going to lead to lower prices. There is no wage increase that comes with it. In fact, I'm sure the very same people fighting for cuts would fight tooth and nail against wage increases. I spoke with the head of the Chamber of Commerce out of these very halls yesterday. When I asked why it was so important, they said it needed to be rolled back because the body needed to deliver on a promise to them. All I see is the wealthy do not want to pay their fair share to an island who has been so very good to them. And they came here yesterday in force to make sure that the investment they made in this majority paid off, that their investment delivered their promise. There's a term in some of my favorite children's books from Lord of the Rings. This term always fascinated me, this term called dragon sickness. It's a state of obsessive greed and paranoia triggered by the presence of treasure, especially those held by dragons. And my people of Guam, there be dragons here with incredible wealth that made my head spin. And the disingenuousness of the conversation here of we must do this for the struggling business, when the majority of the benefit goes to the absolute top. I'm not looking to demonize anybody, but I ask my people of Guam at home to think, how many zeros need to be at the end of the ledger before we even consider the possibility that some might not be contributing enough? In this exercise and asking us all to be more austerious and to tighten our belt, the ones with the most are tightening their belt the least. And so, there's no even meaningful cuts. I heard a big talk about there be afraid to vote on a budget that makes meaningful cuts to the government. But when we criticize those cuts, by the same breath, they say, there's no cuts. There's no cuts at all. So which is it? Are you making meaningful cuts or are there no cuts at all? That's the disingenuous we're talking about, where they speak out of both sides of their forked tongues. And so, I ask the people of Guam to remember this moment and the capriciousness at which these changes are rammed through the people of Guam's house. Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Chair.
Parkinson. On the amendment, Anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Speaker Blas, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, as noble as the amendment is, I have to oppose it. And I'd like to be able to, something just got to me in earlier remarks about private sector paying their fair share. The community saying they have to pay their fair share. You know, when the community was told to shut down, when they were told to leave because they couldn't work, they were told to leave March 20th, 2020. Close your offices. Close your businesses. Go home. You know what happened? You want to talk about fair share? Private sector went home. Had no means to be able to pay for their food, to pay for their mortgages, to pay for some basic necessities. What irks me is when we say pay their fair share, is that it was an organization that I was involved in that waited almost 2 months for the government to move to help people get food on their plate tables, did nothing, so we did it. We had individuals waiting, lining up at 2 o'clock in the morning before we open at 9, just to ensure that they're able to get a 20-pound bag of food. In the meantime, government, who was told to go home too as well, got paid. Fair share? Businesses right now are closing. And whether this conversation is 3%, 4%, 5%, or 6%, 3% of zero is the same as 6% of zero. Do you know how much an individual, a business that makes $1 million a year, at 4% or at 5%, how much they contribute to taxes, in taxes? At least $50,000. You know how much government, in spending $1 million a year, contributes back to the society? A line full of people who wait, who are hoping the government can help them. Have we forgotten about them? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
I think you might be referring to the folks who line up at 6 in the morning tomorrow to try to get their driver's license. Vice Speaker Ada, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a point of information. Mr. Guerrero, how long have you and Ms. Vanessa been at the Office of Finance and Budget?
This will be my 7th year, Senator.
Your 7th year. And what is the function of the Office of Finance and Budget?
Basically, the function of Office of Finance and Budget is provide technical assistance in developing a budget plan, financial data, and to determine basically the economic forecasts of the economy going forward.
And that's for this legislative branch, am I correct?
That is correct.
With that said, Mr. Guerrero and Ms. Valencia, I would like to apologize for this body's actions and words by saying hypocrisy, forked tongues. That is what your job is to give a check and balance to the administration, BBMR. You are the legislative's BBMR, OFB. You guide us in putting this budget together. In the past 7 years, perhaps the budget was great. They liked it, they moved forward with it because they were the majority. They were able to do all their little pork barrel projects. Now that a new majority is here to do what we can to continue to provide the services to our people, it's never good. This amendment, I'm sure you have gone back many times preparing this budget, Mr. Guerrero and Ms. Valencia, for this body to consider. And I'm sure that a lot of things you have took into consideration, ensuring that government spends within its means without burdening our people. And I know you, Mr. Guerrero. You've always said you just want to do what is right. And we appreciate that. At least some of us appreciate that. Because we are not always supposed to agree with the administration. That's why it's checks and balances. Trust, but verify. We've been going at this chapter 1 for the past 4 days. Perhaps every item in this budget that you've covered and gone over and brought you back into this on this 3rd round of amendments, questioning you, questioning your integrity. And all you've done is to do this budget the right way. But yet, the past years, oh, it's good because they were the majority. Now, all of a sudden, oh, where's the money? Where's the money? Yeah. That's because you see these things that are happening. Are we going to be able to satisfy every single agency and department with the government of Guam? You did your best. And this is the substitute version that you presented to us. So all these words that you hear about hypocrisy, about split tongue, about what's good, what's bad, I know you sometimes take it personally, sir. Because that's the hard work that you and your team have put into this substitute bill. And again, for that, I apologize, sir. You deserve better than that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sijus Masi, Mr. Vice Speaker, for those very poignant remarks. On the amendment, anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Senator Guåhan, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, we're here this evening, of course, debating whether to give our people and our businesses some much needed relief. or whether to keep feeding the government that's already bloated with record revenues. Let's be clear. The difference in this debate comes down to priorities. Some want to keep the business privilege tax at the same high rate so they can fund bigger budgets, more spending, more pet projects. But here's the truth. Demonizing the very businesses that keep our economy alive is bad policy and worse economics. If you punish the job creators, the risk takers, the ones who open their doors every morning and keep people employed, you hurt every single family here in Guam. Colleagues, many of us in this room know what it's like to work hard and earn a living, to take risks, to sweat, to build something. We didn't get here by getting our spouse a cushy government job in exchange for political loyalty. We believe in hard work. We believe in hand up and not a handout. You don't need to look far to see the problem. Just look at today's headline. We're paying a relative of a sitting government official multiples above their contract, and they still haven't done the job. Do we really need more of that? Do we really need to keep fueling the system that is more and more taxpayer dollars? And maybe, just maybe, it's time to start requiring that to serve as senator, you should at least understand basic math and basic economics. Because the numbers don't lie. We've had the surplus after surplus, and that means we've been taking too much from the people for far too long. This is not about left or right. It's not about right or wrong. It's the right thing to do, to return the money to the people and the businesses who earned it. That's why I support these tax cuts, because the people of Guam deserve more than just a promise in politics. They deserve to keep more of what they work for. And for the ones that say the fat cats, here's an opportunity. Point them out. Name them. Name the fat cats. Name each and every one. We're a small island. You know, we're not in California where you can't name them. Name them. Quit saying fat cats. Name them. So we'll know. So we look at each other and say, I know, are you related to him or her? Name them. Because every time we think out of the box, bills we introduce that you don't like because bad businesses were corrupt. Fat cats and corruption. Well, if you're so sure about it, name them. Call us out. Tell us, hey, I know who you're with. I know who you're fat catting with. Name the Zamuk Nakatu. You know? I wish the ones who were talking about the fat cats were down at the GVP General membership meeting today. Because the fat cats were there and they were telling how they were hurting. And the employees were there, how they were hurting. How they're ready to close up. Man, we are one Guam. Quit pitting each other. And if you know already of the Zombuk Nakatu, then point them out. Call them out. Quit hiding behind the words fat cats. Call out the katu that's Zombuk. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Masi, Senator Guåhan. Senator Boyer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I get into my my little story that I put together to lighten the mood a little bit. I'm going to say some of the keywords so that, I get that. I'm trying to take notes on how to participate in this deliberation, right? So, for the sake of consistency in what's being said for the last day, padding the pockets of the rich, we're not consistent, we're not funding the tax refunds, and we're not funding DOC. The people are suffering. We need to stay the course. We're being irresponsible. There's going to be a crisis. The hospital, the roads, the schools. I spoke to a constituent. People have been messaging me all day. I've been getting emails all day. People are mad at me. They're mad at the world. They're mad at the senators. Okay, I'm done with all that. I'm going to start with my story. So a few years back, this government had what I call the kind of plenty that makes you feel like you've got it all figured out. It's like when you get your tax refund, you see that a big number in your account, and suddenly you're online shopping for the boat that you don't even know how to drive. We got excited, and we spent, and we spent, and we spent. Then some new guys come in, and they say, all right, friends, put the boat back in the cart. This isn't forever money, because the truth is, the revenue, most of it from a temporary economic boost, is going to go away. And then here's the kicker. Back when we had all that money and we were buying the boat, our hospital was still falling apart. Our schools were still falling apart. Some will say, no, Senator, but we fixed those. But really, what we did was slapped on some Band-Aids and hoped that the problem wouldn't bleed through before the next election. And that's why this whole exercise, bringing the BPT rate down and learning to work with less, is very important. It should be the starting point for this government to live within its means, because the military buildup won't last forever. Tourism is unpredictable, and if we don't start budgeting like grown-ups now, we'll be in big trouble later. Now, let me tell you another story about business, because we've been hearing a lot about how we're helping the rich get richer. We've been hearing a lot about how the rich is getting richer, and we need to set the record straight. A few months ago, I stopped by a construction site. Again, this is a story. I stopped by a construction site where a friend of mine, let's call him Joe, was working on a big military project. I asked him, so Joe, how's business? You must be rolling it in with a $150 million contract. Joe laughs and says, Senator, I wish. Let me tell you where those $150 million goes, since most people think a $150 million contract means $150 to pad my pocket. First, a giant chunk goes straight to payroll and benefits. Hundreds of local workers. We're talking about thousands of people across the island and companies, not just these construction companies, over 40,000 people employed by big businesses here, which easily 40 to 50 million just in pay and benefits. Then you got to consider there's training, there's safety gear, equipment maintenance, insurance, millions more. And then you add in shipping costs to get materials and supplies to Guam, which can cost more than the materials themselves, and payments of dozens of local subcontractors for electrical, plumbing, landscaping. You get the picture? By the time he's done listing all of this, I ask, so what's left over? He smirks and jokingly says, enough to keep the lights on and start the whole thing over and again for the next job. And that's the point. When we raise the taxes on these contracts or these big businesses, just because they're big, we're not dipping into some of this giant pot of gold that we all think exists. We're taking away from payroll, safety, and the work that keeps small businesses busy. And let me be crystal clear. This amendment doesn't punish the rich. It punishes the workers, the suppliers, and the local businesses that reinvest back into Guam. And honestly, if we're looking for someone to penalize for bad fiscal habits, maybe we should start right here in the Guam Legislature. Just kidding. Well, kind of. My dear people of Guam, please don't fall for the false narratives. This isn't some fairy tale where one side of the aisle are the big bad wolves hiding in someone's pocket to think about your elected leaders is not only false, it's downright disgusting. The truth this isn't about forcing ourselves as a government to plan for the day when the extra money stops coming in, because that day is coming. And if we don't act now, if we don't discipline ourselves now, we'll all be paying the price later. And that is why I strongly oppose this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Masi, Senator Boya. On the amendment, Senator Tina Muñoz Barnes, Ranking Member.
Mr. Chair, thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak on this amendment as proffered by the good senator from Magaʹhågan. I want to give my heartfelt thanks to the mover of this amendment for thinking outside of the box in order to find a middle ground for us in this chamber. A middle ground, a compromise is exactly what is needed on the question of the BBT rate. Because I agree that our smaller businesses need some relief from the rising cost of goods, especially in light of all these Trump tariffs. But I also agree that a permanent $40 million cut in Guam's budget is not sustainable, especially given that this very bill has not identified budget cuts to absorb the loss in the BBT revenue. Instead, we are financing that loss in revenue by reducing our tax refund earmark and suspending our emergency savings account, the rainy day fund. So, as the mover of the amendment explained, her approach, which I very much agree with, would create a new tier of mid-sized businesses that will enjoy a 4% BBT rate while retaining a 3% business privilege tax for small businesses and 5% for very successful companies that make more than $2 million a year. And I think this is a chance to break down the numbers of businesses and how much the BBT they are assessed. Today, Mr. Chair, there are about 5,100 businesses on Guam. Today, about 65% of those businesses are taxed at 3% business privilege tax because they make less than $500,000 a year in gross income. This amendment would create a new tier of businesses for the next 20% of businesses on Guam with a lower rate of 4%. And that would leave the top 15% of business earners to continue paying the current 5% BBT rate. This policy decision, Mr. Chair, will only result in a reduction of the business privilege tax of about $8.6 million. And according to the data of business revenue categories provided by Revenue Tax, rather than a $38 to $40 million that would be lost by giving all businesses a 0.5% reduction in the BBT across the board, colleagues, if we adopt this amendment, we will unlock some $30 million in additional revenues to appropriate to the priorities that we have identified in this session that are either not funded or underfunded. For me, in addition to Simon Sanchez and DOC, I'm hoping that we can adopt this amendment to also take care of the Public Defender Service Corporation and the PBS Guam, KGTF. And there may still be funds left over for other needs in education, health, and safety. So, Mr. Chair, while I certainly try not to write off a whole bill based on one single amendment, I will tell you this. Whether or not this proposal was agreed to will matter a lot in my decision to support or oppose this budget when it comes to a full vote later in this session. I am pleading, colleagues, I am pleading with you to join the good member from Magaʹhågan and back this amendment so that we can implement a tax break that is reasonable and sustainable so that we can give relief to businesses without risking tax refunds and critical services, so we aren't saddling us next year. And future senators with another 40 million cuts to agencies. I personally, Mr. Chair, can live with an $8 to $9 million cut in the government's budget, and
Thank you, Senator.
that businesses that manage to make $2 million every year can live with the 5% BBT.
Thank you,
because
Senator.
it certainly isn't hurting their bottom line. And
Thank you,
I know
Senator.
my time is up, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to at least share that perspective.
You're welcome.
As I'm looking for some revenue based on your rules of engagement.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. On the amendment, on the Perez amendment, anybody wish to speak? Who's left? Seeing none, Senator Perez, you're welcome to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, again, this amendment was created as a compromise to give 4% right off the bat to those businesses that need it most. A lot of these businesses need lifelines, and it would help with the recovery of tourism to ensure that activity is here. We want to make sure that Guam is open for business, and we know how hard it is for businesses to come back once they're closed if they choose to do so. You know, my favorite venues have closed down, and I only wish that we could have provided help sooner. So again, what this does, it ensures that our small businesses are provided the tax relief, and it maintains the 5% until we can find a sustainable source of funding for them to get the rollback. But keep in mind, this rollback was not discussed as part of the budget before we came into budget, and so now we're dealing with it. This amendment tries to find a way to satisfy a rollback for at least part of our businesses that need it most, as well as to account for shortfalls. And keep in mind, the congressional budget bill was not passed. And we know now, based on Clearinghouse's report as of this week, we are out $89 million and counting. We don't know what's going to happen with FEMA. In fact, from what we can tell is that the local governments are the ones that are going to have to fork over any kind of expenditures before we even see a reimbursement. The other thing is we hear is the dismantling of DOE. And so I think as part of a budget process, like we do in our own families, we look to see what are the wants, what are the needs. And we have to do this job diligently to discern needs versus wants. And there are things that are beyond our control, which is the tax, the Trump tax cuts, which have been permanized, and which benefits the top 1%, so they get more money coming back to them than the poorest of the households. And so they're already getting money back, and that's what was indicated by the Committee of the Whole, that we may need to set aside more money for tax refunds for that reason. Their estimate was, I think it was 10 million for corporate taxes, 8 million for individual income taxes, but that is not guaranteed. It might grow. And here we're seeing a reduction in the set-aside for the provisions for tax refunds. It doesn't make sense to me. And that's what budget processes do, is we have to weigh what is needed versus what we want. Tax refunds is something that is needed. We do not want to go back to the days where we're paying a huge percent because we failed to pay it on time. And more than that, this tax refund is the people's money that can help them stay afloat, to pay those bills, to buy those needs in their households. So this collective budget is impacting the budget across our island. And so we must do our job diligently to ensure that we are not putting them at risk. And I take this seriously. So that is something that does not make sense to me in this budget, and it came after the budget was introduced, so I totally understand, but now we're trying to rectify the situation. And of course, we didn't see the loss in funding. That's something that we have to rectify now. We're in this room together. The community is looking to us for leadership. They don't want to see us fighting. They want to see solutions. And this is what I'm trying to do with this amendment, is provide solutions.
Senator Perez, since you mentioned the Guam State Clearinghouse, 62,450,000 of that recognition is Guam Energy Office Solar for All. I don't think there's any employees there. I think that's a program that is used to provide opportunities for solar. So that's quite a bit less than the 89 million. That's 62,450,000 for Solar for All in the Guam Energy Office. So on the amendment, there was an objection. Point of information
regarding that project. So that would have helped low-income households to afford the energy bill. So
sure would have, Senator. But the impact in terms of employees and in the government, that's not an accurate statement. There was an objection to the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. Amendment fails. Colleagues, tomorrow we will start with the fund at 9:30 a.m. and we will be going to Chapter 2. And yes, Chapter 1 is closed. We will be going to Chapter 2, Education. There are, of course, as we know, there's several entities within education. So we will start with the Guam Department of Education, and then we will be giving every other educational institution a 45-minute heads up. We are in recess.